This podcast is brought to you by Rebecca Cassells of the Rising Dawn series. Do you like violence? Do you like smut? Are you tired of the stereotypical novels of werewolf romance out there and want something a little bit different? Then pick up Sparked Revolution, Book 1 in the Rising Dawn series by Rebecca Cassells. Available on Amazon, in Kindle, and paperback.
You too can become a sponsor by heading on over to patreon.com/stories, the true and the fictional. Hello guys, and welcome to another episode of Stories, the True and the Fictional. Guess what? It's another interview, another guest. This one's pretty secret. But for now, Ryan, how are we?
Living the dream, my friend, living the dream. Still constantly living the dream every day. And very excited to have another interview. Feels like we've been doing interviews non-stop, and that's just the way I like it.
We are so far ahead, it's not funny, that when
we're so far ahead, we're almost 500 years in the future, and that will play into today's guest.
Very good. Well guys, it's big, it's huge. My book, Ancora, is out now. Not at the time of the recording this, but it's when you're watching this, when you're listening to it on podcast, go grab my sci-fi, fantasy, supernatural novel. I hear people like it. I'm guessing that because, I haven't heard it back from my ARC readers yet. But anyway, check out our sponsors, Rebecca Cassells, Martin Kearns. Rebecca Cassells for the paranormal romance, all the werewolves and characters modelled off Henry Cavill. Martin Kearns for your urban fantasy. And yeah, let's bring in our guest, V.E. Huntley. How are we today?
I'm well. I'm very well. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's great to have you. It's what's the question I always ask, Ryan? That's it. Who is V.E. Huntley?
Well, I am a retired film and television producer. Worked in the business behind the scenes, in the production aspect of it for about 20 years. But now I write dark, steamy, paranormal romance about foul-mouthed anti-heroes with anger management issues and the women who tame them. Or try to tame them, I should say.
Well, we are going to dive into all that, but first we have a tradition. It is the icebreaker questions, where we get to know you and how selfish you are, because these are selfish answers. Because it's easy to give the Miss Universe answers, all the answers people want to hear, but no, we want to know you. So, Ryan, do you want to take the first one, or?
Yeah, I'm going to take the first one. So basically, think of a world we live in where there's no war, there's no cruelty to animals or people, everything's perfect. And with that in mind, if you could get rid of one thing in the world, what would it be?
Social media.
Really?
Wow.
Okay. As a writer with isn't social media a good promotional?
It is.
marketing
It's a
tool?
necessary evil, but unfortunately, I think that social media has made it so that people are too concerned about what other people think of them around the world, outside of their immediate circle, and they're less concerned and in touch with the people in their immediate orbit.
That's so true. And funny enough, because I've heard this from a few different authors we've had on the podcast now, that they have more success selling books out in person, getting out there, setting up a stall. And
I've heard that too. Indie authors, that can be tough for them because of the amount of money that it takes to do something like that. But I haven't gotten out there yet. Again, I've only released one book so far. My second book drops tomorrow, but I'm starting to reach out to local bookstores to see if I could do something like that.
Yeah. And even because I'm starting to do this, probably have already done it depending when this episode drops, but like just even if you only have a handful of your books, you can still whip up a sign with a QR code on it that links them straight to Amazon, and you just never know how many readers you'll pick up just by sending them somewhere to buy your book.
No, that's true. That's true. And indie authors need to do that. They don't have the resources that traditionally published authors do, so they have to get creative with how they find readers.
100%. Well, let's move on to the second one.
Sorry, Jamie, I did have an opinion on this one.
Okay,
If that's okay.
okay.
Jeez Louise, you're jumping right in, mate.
Jump back in.
do you not remember who I am? I am the Opinion King.
I'm the Segway King.
Can I
Yeah,
just
look,
say I
I
love
can.
your accents before we go any
Oh,
further?
thank you.
What accents? I don't know.
No, because we're very well-spoken Australian people, and we're not like some of our bogan counterparts who tend to take the accent to the extreme. But no, I appreciate that. We do try. But I can definitely agree with you on the social media front. I used to be I see me and Jamie used to play in punk rock bands. So I used to be the promotional guy for my band. So I was on social media, you know, 10 hours a day minimum, trying to promote stuff, trying to, get gigs and get people to the shows. But I think over the last 5 years, I've tended to, I don't really post anything on social media. And I think as you grow older and you see the kind of content that's going on nowadays from the younger generation, I think it's actually, it does make me cringe quite a bit. And I
Yes.
have considered, getting rid of social media altogether. But yeah, it's just so much worse than it's just so much worse than what it was 10 years ago.
Well, I think people, when they can hide behind a phone or a tablet or a
Mhm.
computer screen, it's almost like they feel entitled to just say whatever the
Yeah.
hell they're thinking at any given moment without any regard to anybody else. And that's what I think,
Mm.
unfortunately, social media has done.
No, definitely 100%. I think there's a lot of keyboard warriors out there that tend to think that they can, especially when you're an artist or you're a writer or something like that. They feel like they can just trash your work without any repercussions. And I
Right.
think that's just and that even happened back when we were in band. I used to get messages from people all the time saying, oh, you're rubbish, you'll never make it, and all that kind of thing. And I just completely ignored those because they're the people that will just sit inside all day and not come out and enjoy the real world.
Mm-hmm. It's cowardly.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. So I definitely agree with that answer. If we could get rid of social media, I think that would be a good thing.
Let's ease into the next one. What's something on your bucket list?
Visiting the pyramids of Egypt.
We've had that a few
Okay, yeah,
times. We've had that a few times.
yeah.
Yeah, if I didn't do what I did for most of my life or even wasn't, doing what I do now, I would have been an archaeologist. I've always been fascinated with Egypt and the pyramids, and I've never been, so.
Nice. Yeah,
I think
no.
I think that's really good. I think especially, I've got my I just to let you know, I'm in a wheelchair, so I have a support worker who comes and takes me out once a week or twice a week, to do errands and go out in a bit. And he's actually part of a charity, a vice president on the board of a charity who they build orphanages and all around the world. And he's recently just come back from a trip to Egypt. He is Egyptian himself.
Mhm.
And he goes to the pyramids every single time he goes over there, and he says every single time he sees them, he's just in complete awe of the history and of the magnificence of the structures themselves. So I definitely would like to see that in the future too.
Yeah, I think I might have been Egyptian in a past life.
Oh, that's awesome. No, I definitely think I can see why a lot of people do want to go and see the pyramid because I would like to know how they were made.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, a lot of people say, oh, it's aliens, and a lot of people say, no, it was just, a lot of hard work over a lot of years. But I would be interested to go back in time and find out the true answer to how the pyramids were created.
Yeah, supposedly they're investigating that and how they
Mm,
made it so precise without the
Yeah.
kind of tools and technology that we have today. It's amazing.
yeah.
No, it really is. It really, really is. Okay, the next question is one that is we do have a running joke with all of our guests. We do judge very harshly on this next question, so that's whether the
Okay.
interview will continue on. So if you
Okay.
suddenly hear like a dial tone or a the window goes quiet, it means that you've answered incorrectly. Um,
Okay, I've
no,
taken the warning.
so this can be a two-part answer because what you think may be the greatest may not be, in your opinion, your best. So in your opinion, what is the greatest sitcom ever made? And if that is not your favorite, what is your favorite?
Greatest sitcom ever made was Wings.
Ooh,
Okay. Did you say Wings?
Wings.
Wings. Yep.
Yeah.
Joe
Yeah,
and
I
Brian
have heard of it.
Hackett.
I've never seen it.
It is one of the funniest shows I have ever seen in my life.
Okay.
I don't think there was one. Well, maybe as it got towards the end of the series, once you get towards the end of a series, things start to go off. But I don't think I ever saw an episode that did not just make me roll on the floor.
Okay. So in saying that, would that be your favorite as well?
Oh yes.
Okay.
It's
Do you have any opinions on any of the on any of the sitcoms that are out nowadays, or do you just tend to say, you know what, I'm just going to stick with the classics?
No, to be honest, I don't watch a lot of the ones that are on now.
Okay.
Yeah, as somebody who worked in film and TV, I love movies. I've always loved movies. They're my first love. And I grew up wanting to do that. But now that I'm, a little older and I just don't watch as much TV as I used to. I still watch a lot of movies, but not as much TV.
too many options.
Okay.
Yeah.
That sitcom came out in 1971, Ryan.
Wow. So that
What,
even
Wings?
Yeah, that's what it said when I Googled it.
No. Really? No, because no, it couldn't have been.
Let me check the Google.
because I was going to say because I'm old and I was born in '82, so that was
Hang on.
11 years before I was
no.
born.
There you go, wrong one. There was another one called Paul McCartney and the Wings. 1990.
Okay, yeah, I was gonna say, yeah,
There you go.
in a really sad story, the producers of that film were on the plane that was flying from New York to Los Angeles on 9/11. Two of the producers
Wow.
died on that plane.
That's
Oh,
sad.
really?
Yeah, and the series only lasted, I think, a couple of more years after that.
No, now looking at the picture, I do remember Wings. I don't think I watched much of it though. Might have to go back, man, because the 90s were the best.
Yeah, there were some good sitcoms back
Yeah.
then.
Can we just agree? I'm currently watching Frasier at the moment, rewatching Frasier, and I forgot how good it was.
Yeah.
I love Kelsey Grammer. He's
Yeah.
Yeah, he is unique.
he's got that voice, and yes,
Are you gonna watch the newer series as well, Jamie? With
I've watched
still
it.
still the same cast.
Yeah, no, this Niles isn't in it. It's not bad. Like it's just the joke telling is just brilliant.
Mhm.
And there's someone that plays Niles because Niles isn't in it, but there's a character, I think it's his son.
Mhm.
And he just channels Niles brilliantly.
Really?
Yeah, they had
Okay.
really good writers on that show.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, well let's move on to our favorite one of our favorite ones. Okay. You've watched a lot of zombie movies, I take it, or you know of a lot of zombie movies. So what is your zombie apocalypse plan?
Well, it would depend. Is the zombie apocalypse worldwide or just in the US?
Worldwide.
Worldwide? Oh,
Worldwide.
well, I think I'd jump in my RV and try to outrun them.
Cool.
Okay. Well, I mean, and we generally do get that question, and we also get the question of what kind of zombies are they? Are they Walking Dead zombies where they lumber, Day of the Dead kind of thing, or are they 28 days later zombies where they just run really fast and throw themselves to anything and everything? And I like to say a combination of both just to keep people on their toes. So you don't know whether you're going to get the fast ones or whether you're going to get the slow ones. So if it is a lot of slow ones over where you are, I think the RV would be a very good idea. I think that way you could sort of travel around and have enough cover. If you needed to sort of, go into a grocery shop in a town, you could park the RV in front of the door and then just, go in and get what you need and get back in and off you go.
Until you run out of gas.
Yeah.
Until you run out of gas, exactly. Exactly. So maybe you would move over to a Middle Eastern country or something where all the oil is, where they produce all the gasoline that they charge, make us pay $1 trillion for every time we fill up.
Well, an island wouldn't be a bad idea because if you could get onto an island and get rid of
Yeah,
the zombies that are on it, then you could live pretty well, maybe.
I like that. Is there anyone you would take with you? Would you pick up someone along the way, or would you be happy to live in solitude out there?
Well, I'd probably take my husband.
Probably.
Oh, I'm sure he's happy.
Probably.
I'm sure he's happy to hear that. At least into consideration. I
Yeah.
know my wife would probably say the same thing. She'd probably take me only because she can't drive. I think if she could drive, she probably wouldn't take me. So I think that's a sufficient answer.
Yeah. It's a safe one.
Exactly. All right. For the last question, and this is although Jamie, we say every question's our favorite, but this is my favorite question. It used to be Elon Musk, but seeing as he's got a lot of power and he's almost collected all the Infinity Stones to become Thanos, we decided to change it to Bill and Ted. So
Okay.
Bill and Ted arrive in front of you with their telephone booth time machine and go, "Whoa, Rufus has asked us to take you on a test drive of the time machine. So where do you go?"
I want to go 500 years in the future.
And hope
Yes.
there's all vampires and romance stories and stuff like that.
Well, I want to know where we end up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's I wouldn't do well in the past because I wouldn't do well without indoor plumbing. But in the future, I'd love to see what kind of technology we have, where
Yeah.
we've gone. It's a potentially scary prospect, but I'm still curious.
And 500 years, I guess, we get a lot of guests. I'm all for the future. I don't want to go back to the past at all. I'm
Yeah.
like you. I wouldn't fare very well in the past. I'm much happier to go to the future. But we do get a lot of people who go, they want to travel 1,000 or 2,000 years into the future. And I think 500, anywhere between 100 to 500 is I think Earth is still going to be relatively the same, but technology is going to be through the roof, unless we do have an apocalypse situation where we go back to, all luscious green land and living off the land kind of thing.
Or we have a comet hit and plate shift and
Yeah,
extinction level event.
Yeah.
exactly. Then you just rock up and there's nothing but animals there after 500 years. Humans
Exactly.
haven't re-evolved yet or whatever, haven't come out from the fallout shelter. But
Maybe the dinosaurs
yeah,
will come back.
Full circle.
exactly. Full circle, the circle of life.
Well,
There
they've
you
got
go.
they've made the dire wolves and now they're still working on the woolly mammoths, so who knows?
Yeah, you never know.
Oh God. I swear, every time I think I was reading an old memory on Facebook, and it was one that I posted where it said human scientists are now looking at using lizard DNA to regrow limbs on amputees. And as an amputee myself, I would say no, because that's how you get the lizard from Spider-Man. And they're working on cloning too many things. Like, why do we need to clone the woolly mammoth? I mean, you're just asking for trouble. We've already got Skynet happening with the AI situation. It's going to be Judgment Day before we know it, with Terminators and T-1000s. And now you want to clone woolly mammoths to start bringing back the dinosaurs for Jurassic Park? I mean, seriously.
Yeah, humans can't help themselves. They're their own worst enemy.
Like, I get it with technology, like moving forward, every century needs to be a little bit more advanced than the last, and that's fine. But why do we need to? There's a reason these things are dead.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want to bring them back.
Survival of the fittest.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's always stupid humans who are too smart for their own good and just want to use technology to bring back things that have been gone for a long time. How about you use those technology to, I don't know, cure cancer or something like that?
That would be nice.
But then, you know what? If we cure cancer, then the pharmaceutical company don't make any money with their treatments. So
Yes.
I honestly am one of those conspiracy theory nuts that I believe that cancer has already been cured, but the pharmaceutical company don't want to release a cure because they're making too much money off the disease.
Hmm. Yeah, I would agree with you that. I'm not much of a conspiracy theorist, but that's one that
Makes
I
sense.
think you might be right.
Mhm.
You
Yeah.
think with all these movies, like we make them as warnings, don't do this, but then the scientists take it as a challenge.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Well, wasn't it I Am Legend they were the ones that actually did come up with the cure for cancer, but then it just
Yeah.
turned everyone into vampire kind of things.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
So, maybe, we need to do a bit more testing on that. But who knows what the government are doing? I mean, we're never going to know the full extent of what our government, or not our government, because our governments are just lazy, but like in the US government, you're never going to know the full extent of what goes on behind the scenes. I don't even think, your president knows the full extent of what's going on behind the scenes. It's
No,
it's,
no.
it's all the I'd absolutely love to find out exactly what's happening, behind the scenes in relation to curing things and creating things and all that kind of thing. I think it'll be very interesting.
Yeah, from different people I've talked to, and I know people who work in the government. They're 20 to 30 years ahead of where what you see out in society and out in the world. They're 20 to 30 years ahead of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can definitely believe that.
Well, the icebreakers are done. You've passed
Okay.
with flying colours.
Oh well, thank you. I'm
And
glad.
that
I'm glad I didn't get the dial tone.
excuse the pun. That was a reference to Wings. No.
Oh.
This podcast is brought to you by Martin Kearns and the Valor of Valhalla series. In the battle between two ancient evils, can one naive young man become the last hope against powerful creatures of legend? Beneath the Veil is the gripping first book in the Valor of Valhalla dark urban fantasy series. If you like reluctant heroes, infernal myths, and bloody epic clashes, then you'll love Martin Kearns' formidable foray into the unknown. So head on over to readkearns.com and grab yourself a copy of Beneath the Veil today.
Let's get into the fun stuff. So tell us about how you got into writing books.
Well, I've written my entire life. I've always I've always had a creative mind. I've always, told stories to myself, to other people. But as I grew up, I it turns out I enjoyed movies and television a lot more than writing. So, I pursued a career in that. I went to college and got a degree in something practical, but then I up and moved across the country to Hollywood and lived and worked there for 20 years. And I still wrote because that was just, what I did. But I wrote for myself, not really for, anybody else. Although this particular series that I've recently published was an idea that came to me when I was in college. And it was something that I would go back to from time to time between gigs when I had time to think about it, but I never really did anything with it until, after I decided I was done with the entertainment industry and wanted to move on to something else. And uh, so I started writing in earnest, and it still took me a while because, I still had to do things to keep a roof over my head and food on my table. And but then, in the last couple of years, I finally decided it's time. If I'm going to do it, it's time to do it.
Nice. So have you dabbled in screenplays as well, being in that world?
I did write a few screenplays. Nothing ever happened with them.
Yeah.
I worked primarily in the financial aspect of filmmaking. I
yeah.
did budgeting and production and producing and that kind of thing. But I did write about a half a dozen screenplays over the time that I was there.
Cool. Yeah,
But I
'cause-
like books more than screenplays.
yeah, I found that too because I dabbled in screenplay writing for a little bit, and then I just ended up turning all my screenplays into books. Because I've just got that real visual element to writing. Is that how your process kind of works? Like, are you really able to see what you're writing?
Yes, I can. And I'm more of a pantser than a plotter. So, I'll come up with an idea, or I have an idea, and I'll break it down, and I'll plot it a little bit. I'll outline, kind of what I want, but then I'll just sit down in front of the computer, and I let the characters write for me, but I can see it. I can
Yeah.
see all of it, in my mind as I'm writing.
Yeah. So have you fan casted all your books yet?
Have I what? Oh,
Fan casted them? Like going, who would play this character? Who would play that character?
actually, I do. I have because I have to see, and again, maybe it's because I did work in the visual medium of film and TV, that I had to know in my mind who they look like.
Yeah.
Even though I didn't necessarily base them on that person. I would come up with a physical characteristics, and then I'd say, okay, who does that look like?
Yeah.
And one of them, actually, you mentioned Henry Cavill earlier. One of the characters in my book, Henry Cavill. I love Henry Cavill.
Yeah,
I
we
put
all
him in
do.
every single one of my books if I could.
There's what do they say? There's two kinds of people: people that love Henry Cavill and people who are lying.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
I was heartbroken when they dropped him from the Superman series.
Oh, tell me about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
He was. He
But
just.
in saying that, we then got about 30 seconds of Henry Cavill as Wolverine in Deadpool and Wolverine. So that was kind of a little bit of a,
Yeah.
took the edge off.
Oh, I haven't seen that yet.
Oh, you
Oh.
need to. Sorry, I've just spoiled it for you.
Yeah.
Oh,
I was-
no.
that
You
was-
make me want to see it even more. I
it's-
wanted to see it anyway, but I just hadn't gotten around to it. But now I think I'm going to have to go find it and stream it.
You got to do
Oh,
it.
I've watched it 4 times now since it's come out. And it is just so good. It's just a really good goodbye to the Fox Marvel side of things, with the X-Men and everything like that. Now that everything's over with Marvel completely, it's a really good send-off for those characters and obviously the ones that are coming into the MCU as well.
Oh, great.
Yeah. And Hugh Jackman. Gotta love Hugh
Yeah,
Jackman.
Hugh Jackman.
You got to love Hugh Jackman.
Yeah.
He's one of those characters. I loved him in Les Miserables. He was
Oh,
just
yes.
so amazing in that.
He was robbed of that Oscar.
Oh, I know.
And
that was a crime.
yeah, I maintain that anyone could have played Abraham Lincoln and they would have won the Oscar for that because they gave it to the role, not the performance. That's my theory.
Yeah, yeah. It's you could be right with that. Yeah, no, he definitely got the shafted on that.
Yeah, but it was his dream role and he got to play his dream role, so I don't think he's really complaining.
No. If you get your dream role and you can play it, that's all that matters.
Definitely check it out. I think it's really good. You'll laugh for 2.5 hours straight.
Yeah.
That's what I did anyway.
Oh yeah, well I love Deadpool. I watch every time those are on TV and I'm flipping the stations. If it's on, I don't care if it's halfway through, it's beginning, it's near the end. I have to watch it.
Yeah. I like that. I like that a lot.
Cool. Well, let's dive into your series. Give us the breakdown. What is it about?
Well, the Bloodstone Legacy series, Bloodstone is actually a drug it is created, derived using vampire blood. And what it does is it cures all human disease. And it was originally released in the early 21st century. But here we are now, 500 years in the future. And, as a result of that drug being released, vampires were, exposed to the world and eventually, took over the world. But so now the world is a environmental utopia, but it's a societal dystopia. And vampires rule. They live in dome cities that are half above ground, half below ground. And humans are slaves. They're used for blood, labor, and sex. That's it. And the story follows the fiercest vampire commander in the world. He's the most notorious, most feared vampire commander. And 300 years prior, he committed the most horrific act of his life, and he has been living with the guilt and the grief and the pain of that, and that's kind of turned him what he's turned himself into. but what it is the story takes place at it's at least initially starts out at the world, what's known as the world capital now, where they're having their annual council gathering. He comes across a human thrall, who's a slave. That's what slaves are called in this world, and she reminds him of a woman he loved 300 years ago, and he goes off the rails and ends up taking her back to his region with him, and that's where the love story starts. It's a dark paranormal romance. It's set in the backdrop of this futuristic dystopian world, but it's a love story at its core.
That's yeah, and
Okay.
funny enough, I can visualize that very clearly. You
Mhm,
must have
yeah.
worked in Hollywood at some point in your life now. Um, so when's the movie
Well,
coming out? Like seriously?
I would love to see it made as a movie, not just because I wrote it, just
Yeah,
because I think, again, visually it could be really incredible, just with the this world that has been created.
yeah.
Because even though it is technologically advanced, and again, you have all this technology, and these UV light filtering domes that allow vampires to live in these cities and still be out during the day. It's a very dark, twisted world.
Yeah, I think honestly the only movie that I've ever seen where something like that has happened, and I'm not saying at all that it is like yours, but there was a movie back in the early 2000s called Daybreakers,
Hmm.
where the world was run by vampires and humans were kind of on the outs. They were kind of, hunted and they ended up rebelling up. But there's not that many movies where, obviously vampires are prevalent in movies, but where they actually, run the world and humans are, either slaves or on the run or, some kind of commodity, like just like you said, using for blood, labor, and sex. Um, so I think that's a really good premise. I'm picturing it in my head as well.
Oh, well, thank you.
Definitely sounds like something that'll be right up my alley for sure. Because I'm
Oh,
I'm
well,
into I'm a massive horror nerd. I love my horror. I love anything like that, like vampires, werewolves, spirits,
well,
whatever that may be.
a
So
lot of the movies and even books that are set in kind of dystopian worlds,
mhm.
where vampires rule, or they have the advantage. You usually see these dystopian wastelands where humans are running for their lives, and they're living in caves, and again, like you said, they're being hunted by vampires. In this, they're not. I mean, the world is a very um, you know, ordered place. Vampires are here, and humans are here, and humans have, learned, they live out, most of the humans live outside the cities in very primitive environments, villages, that kind of thing. But vampires know that without humans they'll die because that's their food source, so they don't,
Exactly.
they do mistreat them. The humans in my world are very horribly mistreated, very violently mistreated in a lot of ways, but they're not, again, run off into caves and starved and that kind of thing, because if they were gone, vampires would die off too.
Well, I do have another question in relation to your book, and it
Hmm.
may affect, how I read it.
Okay.
Is it how spicy is it?
uh Book one is what they call slow burn. It
Okay.
is spicy. It does have sex in it.
Okay.
And because again, it's a love story. It's less about the, again, the fact that vampires rule. Again, this world is the backdrop for the love story. But the first book is a slow burn. The second book, which drops tomorrow, is very spicy.
Just I always ask because I fell into that trap with one of our other, not a trap, but like I don't generally read super spicy books.
Hmm.
And we had one guest whose book really, really, I really loved the premise of it. And then I started reading it and I got about, probably about halfway through. I'm like, nope, that's enough for me
Yeah.
because it was very spicy. And look, there's definitely an audience out there for me, and sometimes the story can sort of overcome that. But yeah, I just always ask that question. I will still definitely read it, but because I do have Kindle Unlimited, and I noticed on Amazon your book is on Kindle Unlimited. So I definitely will read it, but if it gets a bit spicy, I tend to sort of skip over that part.
Uh-huh. Well, again, as I said,
Uh,
the first one is a slow burn, so there's a very big build up. There's a lot of longing and lingering, and getting to that point. But then once it gets to that point, it gets spicy. The second book is extremely spicy. The last book, which is what I'm currently working on, because it's a trilogy, is less spicy, and because at that point the world is at war again, and primarily that's what's happening in the third book. So there's a lot less sex in the third book.
No time to bang when
okay.
there's war.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Awesome.
where did you get your inspiration for this? Like, did it come from multiple places? Is there favorite genres that you pulled from, or movies, or TV?
Well, it originally started out as not something completely different, but when I originally started creating, as I said, the idea came to me initially in college. Is it started out as the story where this drug is introduced and vampires are exposed to the world and what happens with that. But as I was building the world, and as I kept building and building and building, it just kept growing and growing and growing. And finally, I was 500 years in the future. And I realized at that point that that was the more interesting part of the story, is not necessarily what happened with them being exposed, because we've seen that 100 times. Not that I don't intend to tell that story. That story is almost completely written anyway. I'll go back and release a prequel at some point, but it was much more interesting to me, like when you had asked me in the lightning round, or where where when would I want to go visit 500 years in the future. It was much more interesting after you got there what the world was like to me. So
Well, that was another question that I had, because obviously, setting it in 500 years in the future, are you planning on writing a prequel for how it all started? So you've obviously got that in the pipeline.
yes, that, as I said, that book, that's where I started, and that's the
Mhm.
story that I originally told, and that was also a trilogy, and that trilogy is almost completely written in itself
Okay.
anyway. So I'm going to put that out at some point, once this trilogy is finished, and I have some other books in the pipeline that I'm going to put out first. But I intend to go back and tell that story. I do drop little breadcrumbs here and there in this part of in this trilogy of how the world came to be the way it is, but they're just breadcrumbs that hopefully will whet people's
Yeah.
appetite enough to want to go back and read the prequels.
Yeah, I think I love a good prequel, even movies.
Yeah.
Not X-Men Wolverine Origins or whatever. What is that? Let's say more like the Underworld prequel, the Kate Beckinsale
Oh,
movies. I
uh,
loved that prequel.
mhm.
It was the third one or whatever. Yeah, because
But
I
in
feel
saying that, Jamie, if we didn't get Wolverine Origins, we never would have got Deadpool, because that's where Ryan Reynolds fell in love
yes,
with the character,
yeah,
and he then wanted to make Deadpool. So even though it was a bad representation,
yeah.
we still got some good out of
But they could have chosen not to release it, and he still would have fallen in love with it. Just saying. No,
it.
but I always feel like it's better to build a world and then introduce people to the prequel, like make people want to go back instead of
Yeah,
starting
definitely.
there. I just think it's a better way to hook people in.
It's very Star Wars. They like George Lucas.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's what I used to say to people, that he started in the middle. I'm starting at the end.
yeah, that's it. Love it. Well, Ryan, do you want to ask your favorite question of all?
Yeah,
Covers.
yeah. So I was on Amazon earlier today in preparation for the interview, and yes, Jamie, I do preparation sometimes.
Mm.
I was looking at the covers, obviously on your website as well. You've got the covers there, but I love how what I love is when a series comes out, how there's the covers are the same but different, if you get what
Yeah,
I mean. Like you've got the
continuity.
same, yeah, continuity. You've got the same, you've got the same setup, the same, like what I'm looking at the cover for for Damnation now, and
Mhm.
you've got that emblem and then the eyes in the back looking, looking forward. And then for Atonement, you've still got it's a similar. I love the way that they're set up so that you can tell that they're part of a series, but they also obviously encapsulate what each book is about. So did you design those and do those covers yourself, or did you contract someone to do that?
No, I used 100 covers to do
Okay,
those, but
okay.
I did give them pretty a pretty clear
Clear.
idea
Yeah.
of what I was
Yeah.
thinking in it. I mean, the eyes on Damnation, the eyes are a very big element of the first book, and I don't
Yeah.
want to spoil it, but the eyes come into play. Those green eyes are very important in the story, and
Yeah.
then the main characters, the vampire and the vampire's family, particularly his father, who is the main male character in the prequel. He was an Irish monk who was turned in the 700s, and so
Okay.
there's a lot of Celtic symbology and different things like that in it. So that Celtic knot, medallion on the first book, I kept with that going into the second book, where it's now kind of like a shield with swords, and there's a like an arena above it where the eyes were in the first book, which plays into an element in the second book, because in this world they have these games that are called the Hue games, HEW. It's Human Extinction Warfare, and what it is
Mhm.
that these games where vampires control humans through consoles and collars that are embedded into their necks, and they make them
Okay.
fight each other and polar bears to the death.
Oh,
And
wow.
vampires, control the humans' movements. And but then something, and they take place in this arena, which is reminiscent of the Colosseum in Rome.
Well, in saying obviously, I really like the sound of these vampires, and what they're doing. But what I have a question for is, do these vampires actually look like vampires, or are they the Twilight vampires where they're just sparkly and don't have teeth?
My vampires do not sparkle. They are
Excellent.
not monsters, though. They don't, transform from looking like a human into these, monsters with red eyes and,
Yeah.
long fingers and that kind of thing. They don't turn into animals. They look human. They act human in a lot of ways. But they do have, the elements of vampires where, um, they have strength. They have strength. They have speed. Their eyes do turn red when they feed, but only, or when they're angry. Um, and they do. A sun does affect them. That's why they live in these domed cities, but they don't burst into flames like a lot of vampires do. They
Mhm.
burn from the inside out slowly if they're exposed to sunlight.
Okay.
So they can be exposed to
Okay.
sunlight for short periods of time, but if they end up getting stuck out in the sun, then they will burn live.
So did you read much
Okay.
literature or watch much movies to figure out what kind of vampires you wanted to do? Like, how'd you go about that?
No, I mean I've always loved vampire
Yeah.
films. I've always loved Bram Stoker is
Mhm.
an inspiration for me in my writing. It was one of the I actually read it when I was a lot younger than probably a lot of kids read it. I was fascinated with vampires my entire life. I was actually terrified of vampires. I had this irrational fear of vampires as a child, to the point that I had to sleep with my light on, and my mother had to sit in
Wow.
a chair outside my bedroom door. I had wandered into the den one night in the middle of the night. I woke up and I was about 5, I guess. I don't really remember exactly what age, but I was around 5. And my father used to fall asleep on the couch at night. He'd be watching TV and he'd fall asleep on the couch. And that was back when, you know, after a certain time in the middle of the night on, the main networks, they just put on, these old movies.
Yeah.
And it was one of the Christopher Lee Dracula movies. I don't know which one. I can't remember that either, but he made a whole slew of them.
Yeah.
But it was on, and my dad was asleep, and I just sat there, peeking around the recliner and watching the movie in the middle of the night, and it scared the bejesus out of me. And all of a sudden, I was terrified. And like I said, I couldn't sleep. and I didn't tell my parents for the longest time, and finally I had to admit it. And then just one day, I got over it. This one day, I wasn't afraid anymore, and I was fascinated with them. And so I've always had a love of vampires since then.
So in saying, obviously, you love vampire films and stuff like that, what would be your all-time favorite vampire film?
Underworld.
Underworld, okay, yeah.
Yes,
I like
Kate Beckinsale.
what
Yes.
Yeah, look, I just think I like the take that they have on that. Like, yes, they are vampires, but they still and I really like the whole age-old war between vampires and lichens. But I just love the vampires. Not only do they have strength and speed and everything and that, but they use guns, and it's just a different take on the whole. Up until then, like you said, you see vampire movies are really period pieces, or you get your occasional From Dusk Till Dawn, where it takes place in the Mexican desert. But Underworld was one of the first real movies I remember where vampires were brought into major cities and the world, and it's just about the whole other world that we don't know about, the underworld, so to speak, and the war that they've got with the Lycans. I don't think I saw a bad underworld film in all five or six of them.
Yeah, no, I agree. My world, vampires are really the only supernatural characters. There aren't, lycans
Okay.
or witches or anything like that. It's strictly vampires. But I do like that whole idea of, that kind of war between the different species. One thing that I did take, or one idea that I did take from actually the Underworld movies, because I don't remember seeing it anywhere else, is the idea of bullets that were infused with UV light.
Mhm.
In the future, there are bullets that are. What it is they actually, you know what? I didn't tell you the 100% truth. There are vampires, and then there are half breeds. Half breeds are half human and half
Yeah,
vampire, and
obviously,
then there's
yeah.
humans.
Oh,
But
okay.
they're not a different species.
No.
And the world military is made up of these half vampire, half human soldiers, so they don't have the same problem about going out into the sun because they're a half breed, so they don't have that problem. But they use these UV infused bullets that are infused with UV particles, in their wars with vampires when they have to take vampires down.
So in your world, if it's not too much of a spoiler, how are the half breeds created? Are they just simply, a pure? Obviously, you got purebred vampires. I'm assuming that's when a vampire and a vampire mate, and they then give a pure vampire. Are half breeds? Are they just people who have been turned, or how does that work?
Well, the original vampires in my series are vampires that were turned, that they were once human and they were bitten by a vampire and they were turned. And at one point, the vampires could turn humans into half breeds, where it was the same process where they were bitten and almost completely drained and then fed vampire blood, but um, there's less blood. They're a vampire. In order to be made a vampire, initially, almost like 39% of your blood has to be drained, and then you're fed vampire blood. Because once you hit 40%, you exsanguinate and you're dead anyway.
Yeah.
With a half breed, only 30% of your blood has to be drained, and then you can be turned into a half breed. Now, in the future, because of the technology and the science that was, created or eventually created by the same company that created Bloodstone, there's a half breed breeding program where half breeds are made, and they're made in a lab, and then they're raised, and then there's the vampire procreation program, which was again another drug that made vampire sperm viable, so that vampires could mate with half breeds. They couldn't mate with humans because humans wouldn't be able to carry the vampire children to term, but they mate with half breeds, and then that's how a new vamp. That's in the future. That's how vampires have to be made. They're not allowed to. It's illegal to turn them from a human. But what they are is
Oh,
these babies are born. They're born human. As they age, they eventually turn half breed when they're teens, and then when they're 25, they've turned fully vampire.
okay. All right, that makes sense. That's a new spin on it. I like that.
Yeah, there's a lot of science in it. Again, because it's based on the idea of originally vampires being exposed by a drug that was derived from vampire blood, and now 500 years in the future, they've discovered all the different things that vampire blood can do. It doesn't
Yeah,
just heal humans, or keep them. That bloodstone has cured all human diseases. Humans take it every single day, and they're healthy, and they live to be 150. Half breeds live to be between 250 and 300 years.
That's awesome. That's you've put a lot of effort into creating this world, and I love it. Um,
Yeah, it took me. That was one of the reasons why it took so long to get out,
yeah,
even after I started writing it in earnest, is because the world is. I really built out the world. I probably went a lot further than I even needed to, but in order to be able to tell the story, I needed to know that world inside and out.
yeah. Sure. Well, let's do the fun thing. It's just been pitched and accepted as a movie. Who's directing it?
Oh God, me.
You? Oh well, no, that
Yes.
makes sense. That makes sense. You want control.
Yes. Well, growing up, I wanted to be a director
Oh,
originally.
cool.
And then when I got to Hollywood, I saw, you know, the behind the scenes of what directors did, and I said, I don't want that. But if one of my books were ever made, I would want to be the director.
Yeah, that's
Not that
I.
Hollywood ever let me, but I would
Yeah,
want
no, I would be go independent, go independent. No, I'd be the same because I did a book trailer for mine book that's out now, Ancora, and that's somewhat cinematic. And I've been trying to do a short film with my niece and nephew, but they're teenagers and they're never free. You
to.
know,
No.
but it's like I think there's only one director I would trust with it, and
Uh-huh.
he's an independent one from Australia, and he makes brilliant films. But I just know that he's all about practical effects. He's all about authenticity, and I don't think I'd trust a big Hollywood studio to take my baby and turn it into real.
Well,
is
that's the tricky
is
thing
that
about
Matt
Hollywood.
Holmes?
Sorry,
I'm
yeah, that's Matt Holmes. Yeah,
Yeah.
That's the tricky thing about Hollywood. It's again, and that was one of the reasons I ended up getting out of Hollywood. I worked in the independent world for a long, long time, and I loved independent film. It was hard, and it was,
yeah,
but you had the ability to be more creative. But
yeah,
but then in the later years, I started working on studio projects, and the more I worked with studios, the more I didn't want to work with studios
yeah,
anymore. They breathe down your neck. There's too much red tape. They take the creative control,
yeah,
and this is my baby. I want the
yeah,
creative control.
yeah. Yeah. It's almost yeah. It'd almost be worth having like a big Hollywood star like Henry Cavill running off and doing his own
Yes. Hmm.
studio, and then having more control because so many cool Henry Cavill things were ruined because of tape.
Oh,
Like
really?
like The Witcher. I love The Witcher, and then
Mhm.
season three he lost all control, and
Hmm. Yeah, no, I know. That's the
yeah,
tricky thing.
yeah. So what's next? Like after this because you mentioned this is a trilogy, yes?
Yes.
Is there another series in the work? Are you going to do the exact same thing but with lichens? No.
No, no. Again, currently I'm working on finishing up the third book in the trilogy.
Yep.
And I have several other books, in the pipeline. Not all of them. I write dark romance.
Yep.
I don't write just dark paranormal romance.
Yeah.
So the next couple of books and series that are in the pipeline are not paranormal. I have one that's a serial killer stalker romance.
Mm.
I have another one
Oh,
that's a taboo romance about a priest's fall from grace, and then I have another. It's two series they're dark sports romances that are they're two separate series about two separate sports, but they cross over because the players in each one of them are friends.
A
So
universe.
the
so it
two yeah this
sounds like you've got a lot happening, a lot. It looks like we'll be getting a lot more from you.
yeah my again, the third book in this trilogy right now is scheduled for release in January 2026. I'm really trying to I want to get it out before the end. I want to get it out by November of 2025 because I'd really like to have it done this year. Because these other books, which I'm in different stages on all of those, some of them are standalone, some of them are series. I'm in different stages on them. Those are a couple of them are set to come out in early 2026 and in fall of 2026.
Awesome. Well, I think now's the perfect time to jump into our Patreon section. So, for those who aren't in the Patreon, just want to give yourself a plug. Where can people find all about you, follow you on your socials, and anything you want to tell our listeners?
Well, again, all my socials are, they're all pretty consistent. I have, a Facebook page, V Huntley Author. I've got a Facebook group called V Huntley's Whispers After Dark, and I'm on Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, X. It's all V Huntley. It's pretty easy because it's all consistent. I was fortunate enough that I was able to get my name consistently throughout social.
That's good. I'm pretty much the same. Our podcast, not so much.
Yeah.
but awesome, guys. Thanks for listening. Let's dive into the Patreon. So I mixed these up, Ryan. I tweaked
Yeah,
them.
I saw your message yesterday that you
Yeah.
changed a few.
Well, you got to work and tweak them to get better answers and more interesting things. So VE, feel free to elaborate. Some of these questions are just short and possible you could give a one word answer, but we do love elaboration. So do you want to go first? Do you want to go first, Ryan? Do you want me to go first? How do we do it?
Yeah, I'm just gonna bring it up. Here we go, Patreon. Okay, so question number one, what's your favorite genre to read?
Dark romance, any kind of dark romance. Again, paranormal. Again, is one that I love, but I do also love a good darker stalker romance.
Nice.
Anything dark.
Cool. All right. What is the first book you ever remember reading?
Dracula.
Is that like the original?
Original Bram Stoker. I got it from the library, which was just down the street from my house. I walked there one day, and I was too young. The librarian wouldn't let me take it out, but I would grab the book, and I would go down to the kids area, and I'd hide it in another book.
That's awesome.
So what's the last book that you read?
King of Wrath.
King of Wrath. Who wrote that?
Anna Wang. It's not a dark romance, but it's almost like a mafia kind of romance.
Ooh.
And before that, I read Nocturne by Corinna Halley, which is another vampire book, but it's set in the 1940s. Yeah, it's amazing. She based it off of a real cold case in Los Angeles, a murder case that took place in the 1940s, and she built this whole story around it that involved vampires being responsible for this unsolved murder that is apparently still unsolved till today. It's really fascinating. She did a great job.
Wow.
Awesome. Okay, what's a book that is on your to-read list?
Ooh, on my to-read list. Oh gosh.
Everyone's got a big pile.
I know. I'm trying to think of. I haven't read this series, and I wasn't really inclined to read it. For some reason, it just didn't seem to resonate with me. But I think I want to try Fourth Wing.
Oh.
By Rebecca Yarros.
Cool.
Now that the one that just came out recently, I've just seen so much about it online. It's made me want to read, start the series.
Yeah. And this is a question that's not on the Patreon list, but are you more of a digital reader or a physical book reader?
Both. I love holding books in my hand. I love turning the pages. But recently, within the last year, I've become more of a digital reader. It's because it's just been easier because I can, when my husband and I went to Hawaii for our 25th wedding anniversary back in October, and I was able to bring, I brought my tablet with me, and so I was able to read, on the beach, and I didn't have to worry about carrying a bunch of heavy books.
And that's
But
exactly why I've changed. I used to be a physical reader, but over the last, say, 5, 6 years, I'm now more of a digital reader because yeah, I take my tablet everywhere I go, and it's got, it's really good that I can just open up my Kindle app or my iBooks app and have, hundreds of, even thousands of books just ready to go.
yeah, it's a lot easier when you travel. That's for sure.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
that
used
that
to.
wasn't.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that that question wasn't on the Patreon thing, but I meant to ask it on the main show, but I forgot.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Weaseling
no,
it
I
back in.
used to always have to have a separate carry-on for my books
Yeah,
A
because
whole
I'd always
bag.
bring so many. Because I'd always bring them with me. But having a
well,
tablet's a lot more convenient now.
Yeah.
well, I used to read. Well, I still do digitally, but I used to read a lot of Stephen King books, and even just taking 3 of those books is half a backpack because they're all so big.
I
So
know.
that's what I love about digital. I can have his whole collection on my tablet, and it doesn't take up 2 suitcases.
And it won't give you a backache
So
carrying it.
exactly. All right. Well, question number 5. Do you remember a TV show called Gumby?
Yes.
Yeah. So Gumby, you know how Gumby used to be able to jump into books and go into those worlds just for,
Uh-huh.
a short period of time. So if you
Uh-huh.
could jump into any of your favorite any book and be in that world, you don't have to live there, you're just jumping in for a little bit. What would that be?
What book would it be?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh, probably just because I just read it, I would think Nocturne.
Okay. Back into the
Just because
1940s and
again the book was so well written, it's like I could feel because it was LA in the 1940s and I lived in LA for so many years, and just the different places that she was describing, I knew those places, but they were so different back then. I think it would be fascinating to kind of jump into that world, and one thing that I've always wanted to do is if I could have a superpower of any kind, I'd want to be invisible so that I could, just
Oh, yeah.
go around and just, you know, see things and learn things and be places and nobody would know it.
Figure
yeah,
out what's
and
going on behind the scenes of the government.
Yeah.
well, I always like, when I've grown up, you're like, well, who wants to be invisible? But now that I'm older, the people, I'd love to see what the people say about me when I'm not there. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like, I'd love to see what my wife would say if she knew I wasn't here, or I'd love to hear what, certain people that I know would say about me if they didn't know that I was there.
Yeah.
I
Hmm.
think that would be a good thing, like a good thing to know, because then you really get to know the people that are in your life.
But
Yeah.
I also think that's how serial killers would be born, right?
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
It's
And
a
that
risk.
I think I would be one of them for sure.
Yeah. All right. In a similar fashion, this question, if you could spend the day with any fictional character, who would it be? And what would you do?
Dracula.
Dracula.
Dracula. um, and I guess it wouldn't be the day, it would be the night,
Yeah.
because of who he is by nature. Um, I would want to know why he became Dracula.
Ooh.
I'd want to know, what drove him to become the monster that he became, because I don't think he was born that way.
There you
I
go.
think I think, and this is just my personal opinion. I've read a lot of things about the character Dracula and how he was based on a real person, Vlad the Impaler,
Hmm.
from back in that time period.
Right.
Um, I'd like to think, and I'm one of these people who I don't believe every villain needs to have a backstory in terms of, oh, he was abused and people treated him badly, so he became this villain. I honestly would like to think that Dracula he was always evil
Hmm.
and always evil. And, there was maybe a vampire out there who just saw the potential that he would have for their kind and just turned him. And that just made him even worse with super strength, superpowers, like all the vampire attributes that he would have. I'd like to think that that is the backstory behind Dracula. Again, that's just my opinion. I'm one of those people who, I don't need my villains to have traumatic backstories, and that's why they became a villain. I just believe that some people
Well,
are born evil.
some people are, absolutely. I think some people, and the question, to ask you, how do you know Dracula was turned?
Well, that's right. He could have been born a vampire, exactly.
Hmm.
So yeah, exactly.
That's
You
what I
don't
would
know
want to know.
that.
How did he become a
Yeah.
vampire? Was he
Okay.
turned? Did someone else turn him? Was he born that way? Did he, as he grew, something happened biologically in his body that changed him? I mean, there's a lot of different scenarios and stories you could come up with of how he became who he was. And I don't know if I've ever seen, well, there was that Dracula movie back in 2000, I think it was.
Luke Evans one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
where they kind
Dracula
of they
Untold,
kind
yeah.
of told that story, but in a really terrible way. I didn't think that they did very, very good with that at all.
But brilliant
I don't.
actor.
Oh yeah, I actually like him as an actor,
Yeah.
but I don't think that the movie was well done.
Yeah.
But I don't know of really any other story that I know. Oh, no, I don't think I know of any other story. There's actually another book series by same author, Karina Halley, who it's called The Dracula Duet, and it's two books, Blood Orange and shoot, I can't remember the name of the second one, but that one does have it's about Dracula, and the beginning of the first book does show how he became a vampire. But I don't think I've seen much on that. I think that would be fascinating for somebody to write that.
I was wondering,
Maybe I will.
yeah, well, there you go. That's something that you could do for sure.
Just
Are
add it
you
to
a
my list.
fan? Are you a fan of have you seen the new Nosferatu?
I haven't seen that yet.
No, it's good. As someone who's seen well, obviously it's a remake based on a remake based on an original film, because the original film came out in the 20s and it was just
Yep.
silent. And then we had one in the 60s
Hmm.
with Willem Dafoe,
Right.
which was really good. I enjoyed that one. But me and my wife, my wife absolutely loves Nosferatu. We watched the new one a couple of weeks ago.
Hmm.
And it was fantastic. Bill Skarsgård, that man he's like the new, I would say Johnny Depp. He had the ability to play these weird characters and
Hmm.
completely, you couldn't tell it was Bill Skarsgård if you didn't know it was Bill Skarsgård, Count
Hmm.
Orlok. But yeah, I'd recommend if you're a vampire fan, definitely check it out.
Oh yeah,
Um,
it's on my to be watched. That unfortunately,
yeah,
the last 3 to 4 months, I've been so deep into getting Atonement
yeah,
finished, getting it edited, getting everything ready for this launch, that I've had to set aside the my TV and my movie watching. Which once this drops tomorrow, I'll get through my launch in the next couple of weeks, and then I'm taking a month off to clear my head. I have to do that. I have to step away
yeah.
from my writing to clear my head, and I'm gonna get caught up in all my movies, and that's on the top of the list.
Awesome. Yeah, I feel like even though you're writing a trilogy, you kind of do need a bit of a palate cleanser in between, so you can come back to it for the third one fresh.
Hmm. Yeah, well, that's why
So,
I have so many, these other books that I mentioned earlier that are all in different stages of completion, because I have to step away from what I'm writing sometimes, and I write something else for a while to clear my head and cleanse my palate and that kind of thing. So,
okay, well, the next question is, and I'm going to set the scene for you. So, it's nighttime. There's a nice fire going. You're sitting on the ground on a rug or something, and then in a chair, sitting there reading your favorite book to you. Who would you have? Like, if you could have anyone in the whole world, dead or alive, reading your favorite book to you, who would it be?
I'm gonna sound like I'm a broken record, Bram Stoker.
Okay, Bram Stoker reading
I'd want him to
Dracula.
read Dracula to me.
Yeah.
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
I think that would be on, in my top five for sure for that actor.
Mhm.
Um,
I think any author reading their own work to you is
yeah,
fascinating.
Yeah.
that's what I
Because
love. I love audiobooks, and I drift towards the ones where the authors are actually reading their own books.
Hmm.
Especially like biographies. I love a lot of biographies, and a lot of the time on Audible, because Amazon just has unlimited money, they get the person to read the book. I just find you get a lot more emotion and a lot more. It feels more realistic when you've got the author reading their own work.
Hmm. Yeah, I think there's something about like you said, the inflection in their voice, and because they know where to put the emphasis, not just on the
Yeah.
words, but on the feeling, on the emotion that's supposed to come across in any given scene, whatever it is.
Oh, definitely,
Yeah.
100%.
Cool. Right, our next question is generally catered for our indie book lovers. So, what is a must-read indie book, or if you don't read any indie books, just a must-read book in general?
Um, a must-read indie book. Um, Let me see. I just recently read a book by an author that I've become friends with, um, and it's a book called Demon Verse,
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
it's about demons. It's about the world demons. It's been discovered that certain people have demon DNA, and it's
Okay.
left over from when angels roamed the earth and mated with humans. Then God came and said, we got to wipe the world clean of all these abominations, and so the angels had to destroy their progeny. Well, there was one that was saved,
Hmm.
and well, there was more than one that was saved, but there are now descendants of these children that were created, and it's been exposed to the world that there's all these people that are half demon. And while there's this one girl who's the daughter of one of the angels who discovers she has demon DNA, and but then it turns out she there's something special about her. Again, I don't want to give too much away. There's something special about her, so she gets her own private guardian angels. And
Wow.
it's really fascinating. It's a series of 5 or 6 books. I've only read the first one. I just finished the first one recently, and the second one is in my TBR. But it was really fascinating. Her name is Margie McDonald Welsh is the
Oh,
author's name.
cool.
But it was really fascinating the way that she tied in, this thing about, that's, if you know anything, or if you've read the Bible about, something that supposedly happened in the Bible, and the way that she tied it into the present day. And
Cool. Well, check it out, guys.
Awesome. Okay, so then my last question for you, and then Jamie's got the final question. This
okay.
question is, if you could combine the works of two different authors, so the worlds of two different authors in one, who would they be?
Oh boy. Wow.
It's a tough one.
Yeah, that is a tough one.
Or even just two books.
Well, again, one subject that I find particularly fascinating, and it does come into play in my series, the Bloodstone Legacy, is the concept of reincarnation.
Hmm. Hmm.
And uh, the Dracula duet that I was telling you about by Karina Halle is the story about Dracula, but it's about reincarnation and the woman that he loves and how she's reborn over and over again, and he kills her over and over again. Um, but then there's another author named Scarlett St. Clair who wrote another series that also has the topic of reincarnation and being reborn and that kind of. And it's also a vampire series. It's a 2 book series, so it's a duet, not really a series. But I think it would be fascinating to see those two combined,
Cool.
because
Cool.
one is present day,
Yeah.
it's
Mhm.
contemporary, and the other one is it's not really set in the past, but it's set in a different world, like
Yeah.
a fictional kind of fantasy world.
Mm.
So I think, combining those two would be interesting.
Excellent. Well, let's bring it home with I'm going to say this is probably the easiest question. Um,
Okay.
fingers crossed.
Yeah.
What
You've
are
had some hard ones. You've made me think tonight.
yeah, it's what we have to do. It's what we do. Um, so just simply, what are your top three desert island books?
My top three desert island books.
Books you'd take to a desert island.
Desert Island. Okay. Um, Again, not to sound like a broken record, Dracula, because
Dracula, yeah, yep,
I've reread that I don't know how many times over my life.
yeah.
Um, The Da Vinci Code,
Mm, yeah.
because I just thought that was fascinating. And what would be the other one? Oh, you know what? Haunting Adeline.
Well,
That one
Awesome.
is that one's a really creepy book, but they're all different. They're all different
yeah,
because I like variety. I'll read
yes,
just about anything. I got that from my mother. My mother would read, the back of soup can labels just for the
yeah,
sake of reading something. She was
yeah,
probably the most well-read person I ever knew, and she impressed that upon her kids, and I followed her in that way. I'll read anything,
yeah,
even if it's not a genre that I typically like.
yeah,
I'll try it, and if I
yeah,
don't like it, I'll put it down. I'm not the
yeah,
kind of person who I'll DNF a book if
yeah.
it just doesn't resonate with me. But I'll read just about anything.
So would you say you're a bit of a mood reader then? Like
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. It's whatever I feel like reading it, I've got to be in the mood for it. If I'm in
yeah,
the mood for something really dark, I'll read it, but I read, as I said, just about anything. So,
cool.
Well, I
Well,
just wanted to say thank you for talking about the Dracula duet because I've just added it to my Kindle Unlimited both books. I'm really interested to seeing how that works out.
yeah, she's an amazing writer. Uh, she's one of my favorite authors.
yeah.
Awesome. No, I'm looking forward to diving into that duology. So awesome.
Before we let you go, I have one final Dracula related question.
Okay.
Have you watched Renfeld?
No,
Do you know about Renfeld?
no. What? Tell me.
It's Nicolas Cage as Dracula,
Uh-huh.
and it's all about his servant, um, played by
Wait a minute. When
Nicholas
when would
Holt.
that? When did that come out?
Recently, I think a couple of years ago, maybe.
Really?
Yeah,
I've heard of
two
it, but
two
no,
years
I didn't
ago.
see it.
Yeah, and so Renfeld goes to group, and he's talking about his toxic boss, who is
Oh,
Dracula,
jeez.
and it's a very violently graphic comedy.
Hmm.
And Nicholas, no, yeah, Nick Cage doesn't hold. He just goes all camp Dracula, and
Uh-huh.
it's very funny. It's very violent, and it's just an interesting updated take.
Uh-huh. Oh, well, all right. Well, I'll have to give it a try. In all honesty, I'm not a huge Nick Cage fan.
Yeah,
Um, it really just depends on what he's in.
yeah. Well,
There's, um,
well, I find it depends on the movie. Like he's brilliant in some things he's brilliant in, and then other
yeah,
things you're just like I didn't like that movie. you know?
yeah.
Yeah,
And sometimes I don't know if it's because I didn't like the movie or I
yeah,
didn't like the way that he portrayed the character. He is such a versatile actor,
yeah.
and his approach to acting is very Johnny Depp like in some
Yes,
ways, where he just immerses himself into the character,
yeah,
and that's fascinating. I mean, and that's brilliant. It makes him an incredible actor, but sometimes he just rubs me the wrong way.
yeah. Yes,
So, but that
yeah,
that does sound interesting. I mean,
yeah,
again, anything vampire or Dracula or anything like that,
yeah,
I'm willing to try.
yeah. Well, if anything, it's a good laugh. If
Okay,
you like Deadpool, it's that kind of humor,
really.
and
Okay.
violence.
All
like
right. I don't
like
mind violence. Violence
they
doesn't bother me.
there's a scene where he rips off, he rips people's arms off and beats them up with their own arms. Like
Okay.
it's just stupid.
Uh-huh. All
Um,
right. Well, I'm gonna go add that to my to be watched.
all right, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me. This has been a blast.
Yep. So, guys, thetrueandthefictional at gmail.com if you want to reach out. Follow us all on our socials. All the Huntley's links will be down below in the description, and we'll catch you next time.
See you next time.